We're happy to have the turnout tonight. All right, folks. My name is Eric Alexander. I'm a director of Vision Long Island. We've worked and co-chaired the Hicksville Revitalization Committee. We've worked with a lot of you guys for a lot of years. We're helping on this traffic study and the outreach. I'm glad folks are here tonight, which is just great. We got a great agenda and a lot of questions answered, a lot of good information for folks. So let's get started. I know last time we started a little later than folks wanted, so we're only 15 minutes in. Folks got to mingle a little bit, have some coffee. But let's get started with our legislators, and Legislator Rose Walker from Nassau County, and also Legislator Laura Schaefer and Legislator Arnie Drucka. Come on down, guys.
Mike, I think we're loud enough that you don't need a microphone, but we really just want to thank you all for being here. Those who couldn't come, if they're your neighbors, friends, whatever, share information that you received tonight with them, please. And I think it's going to be very, very informative. We had the first public meeting,
Last June.
All right, yeah. June already, so 7 months ago. So, a lot of what they heard there, they've now worked into the project, and we'll be given a lot of information tonight. So it's really informative for every one of us, and Laura and Arnie say a few words. But again, thank you all for being here, and most important, Happy New Year, and we wish you all the very best of health and happiness in the new year. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody who's here that is making this night happen. I think it's including everybody who came tonight, took time out of their lives to come here, because it's important to you. And it's important to us as your representatives to have something as transparent as this, to make sure you're here. You can ask any questions that you want to, and you should get the answers. And if you don't get them tonight, reach out to us. Again, you can reach out to them, though you won't necessarily need to reach out to us, because I know these people are on top of it. Eric Vision Long Island, they really are all about doing what is in the best interest of the community. So make sure that you share whatever feelings or concerns or whatever it might be, thoughts you have about it, so that this is the place to work that out, and to make sure that we hear what your feelings are.
Thank you again. Echoing the sentiments, Happy New Year, good health to everybody. It is very, very gratifying to see the turnout here. Hicksville is such a vital, vital community on Long Island, in Nassau County. And the fact that you're all here shows that you are interested, you're enthusiastic, but you're concerned. And your concerns have a right to be heard, and you have your questions asked and answered. This revitalization program has been going on for many years, but we're making incremental steps here now. It is moving along, and we need to make sure that everything is done correctly and that you're informed. And I want to thank Eric Alexander and all the people here for doing this in the most transparent way possible, so that everything is up front. The worst thing that developers can do is not inform the community that they're developing in, and not keeping them in the loop with exactly every detail, especially a project of this magnitude. So again, thank you all for coming. We're all here for you too. We all share this district, and we're at your beck and call should you need anything. So thank you again, have a good night.
Just to be clear, it's not a DRI meeting. It's a meeting regarding the Downtown Complete Street project, which obviously is a part of the whole, but I just don't want people to say, well, I thought we were going to talk about this or that. It's focusing on the Complete Streets project. Okay, thank you so much.
Let's give a hand to the legislators. Since we had this meeting last June, we've gotten a lot of feedback. We had a full room then, and we got feedback through the website. Many of you made comments. Many of you have called in and shared information. That's actually why it took so long to get back here again. We actually had a meeting scheduled. We were going to try to do this in October, but we're getting feedback again from folks here in the community. We got feedback from the legislators who had like a pre-meeting. They're like, let's change this, let's look at that. They were just asking a lot of good hard questions. So we actually had a December meeting scheduled, but it was getting close to the holidays, and we're like, you know what, let's just start the year fresh. We're glad folks can make it today. And before I turn it over, I just want to explain what we're going to do today. So we are going to hear from Nassau County DPW. We're going to hear from the project team, and I know my name's been mentioned a lot, but we're just doing the outreach on this side. NV5 and LK McLean are the key technical planners on this, and they've just been doing a fantastic job. So they'll be introduced, and we'll give a formal presentation in just a bit. After that, we'll take some questions, and then we'll take some questions for a period, but then we're going to get into more details. I know Jim McCaffrey's here, and so anyone who wants to talk about land use and town zoning, we'll hear from Jim. Anyone who wanted to, that came up at the last meeting. Also, the issue of trucks was a key issue, and we have a fellow from DPW who can talk about that as well, so maybe Sean will enlighten us on that one. So the truck traffic we can get to, so we'll have breakouts on land use, truck traffic, and then lots of details that'll follow up on the presentation, because some people have very street-specific questions. So with that, let's introduce Sean Sally, who's Nassau County DPW. He's the planning division. He's just a fantastic guy. He's done this in different parts of the island, different parts of Nassau County, and he's bringing his expertise here. So Sean, take it away.
Good evening, and I'd like to echo the legislators' appreciation for all of you taking time out of your very busy schedules to attend tonight, to join us. Again, as Eric mentioned, my name is Sean Sally. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Nassau County Department of Public Works. I'm happy to be here presenting to you all this evening. We have a great team with me here tonight, and we're excited to get started. I just want to sort of set the stage here, but really the purpose of this study was to develop feasible recommendations for the county, the town, and the state to collectively improve the safety and accessibility of the Hicksville downtown, specifically in the area around the Long Island Railroad Station. The railroad station is a major asset for Hicksville residents and business owners and business patrons, and as such, safety improvements and accessibility improvements will support, and pedestrian infrastructure improvements will support commerce, economic development, and just the general quality of life in the Hicksville community. So that's really those are sort of the tenets and the ideals that we took back in working on this project. Hicksville deserves an enhanced downtown, and all of the stakeholders to come to the table to assist the residents, the business owners to meet those goals. So again, we're happy to be here this evening. We've been coordinating with New York State DOT, the Town of Oyster Bay, and the Long Island Railroad, as we're all stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, we all either have road maintenance or infrastructure responsibility in the general area. So we've been meeting several times over the past year and receiving feedback and input on ways to make the downtown area more accessible to the young, to the old, and everyone in between. So this evening we're prepared to present to you preliminary recommendations that have come out of this study. The recommendations have been developed as part of the outreach that has taken place between the public meetings, the website input, there is the technical review and the modeling, but most importantly, it's the observation and it's the ears and eyes on the ground that many residents have provided that insight to us to make sure that we can, that the ideas and the recommendations that we put forth are in fact feasible, and again achieve the goals of the study and the wishes and the desires of the community. So I sort of just covered this again, but it's really concentrating on pedestrian safety, vehicular safety, accessibility in and around the railroad station. We've all been sort of involved in what's been going on with regard to the zoning and the DRI in the village, in the town and the hamlet. And so and the legislator mentioned this, incremental improvements. We come to the table with some of the transportation improvement recommendations. So any help that we can provide to bring about progress, we're here to do that. So I look forward to the presentation this evening, hearing your feedback. As Eric mentioned, we do have the boards in the back, and we'll break out in those sessions afterwards. We take detailed questions. If there are any specific questions on your street, issues regarding truck traffic, we do have traffic engineers from the department here with me this evening that we can sit and talk with you specifically about your concern. So without further ado, we'll get started with the presentation. I'd like to turn it over to our project manager from the Nassau County Department of Public Works, David Viana.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is David Bian. I'm the project manager for this project. You may not have seen me at the first meeting. We had a different project manager at the time, but I'm excited to be working on this and help advance some of the goals and vision that community members like yourselves have for Hicksville. So Sean wanted me to just briefly give you guys a recap about the public outreach and coordination that we've been doing for this project. It's very important that we don't do this project in a silo, that we work with you all to make sure that we're accomplishing your vision. We've established a technical advisory committee, which is made up of the legislators that represent the Hicksville area, their staff, the New York State Department of Transportation, the Long Island Railroad, Nice Bus, Town of Oyster Bay, and representatives from local community organizations. So that technical advisory committee has met with the county on 2 occasions to give them an initial understanding of what our goals are for the project, and then to present our preliminary recommendations before we came here today. And that group has helped us refine them further before we presented them here today to make sure that they're aligned with what the community really is seeking. So we're excited to be presenting all of that tonight for you guys. As far as our outreach, in addition to the technical advisory committee, we have a project website. I'm not sure if most of you have been able to take a look at it. If you have not, I encourage you to do so. It's downtownhicksvilleny.com. On that website, we have project documents, information from the last public meeting. We have a wiki mapping tool, which was a unique way for us to get a better understanding of the concerns that you all have. We got some great feedback. People put little pins on maps of areas that are of concern to them. And that feedback that we received helped inform our recommendations that we're presenting here today. So take a look at the website if you have not. We intend for it to be a relatively permanent resource for you all to understand what's going on in the Hicksville community. And as we complete this phase of the project, which is the study phase, and we move on into design and engineering and eventually construction of projects, that project website will be your resource to get a clear understanding of what's going on. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to the NB5 project team, and they're going to go over each of the recommendations. We have a total of 8. As Eric said, after the presentation is completed, we'll do a 30-minute Q&A, recognizing that we all have a lot going on. We want to be as we want to stick to that schedule as best as possible, so that at the end you can all walk around at the boards, and the project team will be dispersed around the room. We'll be able to answer your questions, and we think it'll be an easier way for us to facilitate discussion with you all. So thank you so much for coming, and we're looking forward to working with you guys in the future. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Steve Normandin. I'm with NV5. We're one of the consultants for the Nassau County Department of Public Works for this project. So what I will do real quick, we've already talked about what we had done in June with the public meeting. I'm going to go through real quick what we had shown at that point, and that was all about the existing conditions. Just restating the issues that we've seen, and then we'll go right into the recommendations, because all the recommendations are based on this data, as well as the input that we've seen from all of you. So just rehashing, we talked about the accidents. There's over 2,000 accidents in the area over the last 3 years. And just to refresh, the project area goes from Old Country Road in the south up to basically John Street to the north, and serves the downtown Hicksville proper around the train station. Most of these accidents are rear-end collisions, and are all kind of related to the congestion that happens out there. But there were pedestrian and bicycle incidents as well. With that, we saw the accidents, and we overlaid the actual pedestrian activities. We did an extensive, comprehensive traffic count program, both for traffic, pedestrians, and cyclists. And as you can see, and as you know, basically all the activity by these heavy lines are shown where the most pedestrian activity was taking place around the train station, and then the east-west movements, north-south down to the station area. And then one of the bigger generators, of course, is all of the surface parking that takes place in and around the train station itself. This map just shows, once again, both the public parking, which is in yellow, which is the town and Long Island Railroad and around the station, as well as a handful of private lots down at the southern end. And With that, there's the pedestrian activity that goes with it, the east and west and all of the downtown activity with the pedestrian movements. So that's our focus is pedestrian activity, safety, enhancing the walkability of the corridor. So this is what we're here for tonight, and that's what's on the boards, what you may have had a preview already. But we are discussing, there's a lot of problems and a lot of recommendations we can make in general. So we won't go into the generalities of simple things like the state of good repair of the sidewalks and the handicap ramps. That'll be a general statement in the report. As sidewalks and the handicap ramp standards have changed, a lot of them have now become substandard. So those will be some generalities that we'll make in the recommendations in the final study report. But tonight we want to hammer in 8 potential recommendations, almost like 8 project locations, and we'll go through them one by one to show you what they look like. So up at the top, the first one we're going to talk about is a project we're calling Broadway Downtown Streetscaping, and that's going to be all along Broadway from Old Country Road up to John Street. The next one, we'll talk about the bike routes and improving and accommodating bicycle facilities. That'll be project number 2. Number 3, we're going to talk about improvements at the Duffy Avenue Newbridge intersection, the big wide intersection down by the town garage. Number 4, on Duffy itself, over here by the parking garage, tons of pedestrian activity there. We're looking to make that a safer crossing. Number 5 would be the Broadway and Newbridge intersections at John Street. We're basically calling this one big project area. The intersections are closely spaced. That was the presence of all of those accidents. A good majority of the accidents took place at those 2 intersections. So we'll focus on improvements on there. Number 6, we're talking about the train station itself. Obviously, a lot of deficiencies at the train station, pickup, drop-off, pedestrian activities. So we'll focus a project at that location, number 6. Number 7, we're talking about what we're calling the Barclay Triangle and park expansion. So this big area here is the biggest component, biggest wow factor in terms of what you'll see here tonight. And then number 8, we're calling a project called the Underline, basically the area underneath the Long Island Railroad. We're looking to enhance that as that east-west connection to make that safer regarding the parking and the movements that are made east to west. So we're going to go through them one by one. I'll start with the first. This was the Broadway downtown streetscaping. What this is that commercial corridor, basically strip type of commercial activity that takes place along Broadway as kind of the more classic Main Street part of this project area. And as you all know, the area has seen better days. It's an older construction. The sidewalks are old and have various shapes of disrepair, but mostly the trees are dying. They've kind of outlasted their useful life. There's clutter with signage, parking meters, and the bicycles that are just tied to anything you can see. So there's a better way to organize this entire sidewalk area and also give it a nice facelift. And in addition, there's some issues down by Herzog and the crossings that take place with the commuter activity. So what we would be proposing is a classic downtown streetscape rehabilitation of that corridor. This is a recent project we had constructed, and really just clean lines. And if you replace the sidewalk itself, provide a narrowed amenity strip, a brick strip, something along linearly that doesn't take up. These are pretty narrow sidewalks in terms of the amount of activity it takes. We can't widen those out, but we can work within them and kind of repurpose and make the space visually and physically larger. And what we had done here was, smaller tree pits, the right tree that's going to last, and the right construction, as well as the amenity strip with a brick, decorative pedestrian scale lighting. I think this is all the lights are off, right, Jake? This is it. These are all emergency lights. Yeah, that's the best. So with that, and these boards are going to be in the back, and that's the point. We're going to run right through it. It's going to be a lot of information, but we can see these up close a little later. So and the other things is at the corners where we do, we have narrow sidewalks, what we did in this particular job is we evolve out and create a space where we can, and in this particular case, on the town roads, most likely, because 106, Newbridge, or Broadway are, state roads. The state tendency to not want these on their facilities, but we can wrap them around on the town roadways, create that shorter crossing distance for pedestrians, and actually give it a more aesthetic place for someone to stand in a larger area, creating a public space out of where nothing is now. It's illegal to park at those corners anyway, so that also will prevent that issue. Also provides room for planters and seasonal plantings with the Business Improvements District, and gives you that space that's not there now. And once again, just to highlight where we are on the map, this is Old Country Road down here, and we're looking all the way up to John Street to enhance that particular area. I'm going to hand it over to Chris real quick, he'll do a couple more.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So the next project area that we're going to focus on is bike routes and facilities. So we see here right next to the entrance of the station, there's a lot of bikes at the station. People are biking to the station. We saw the photos of Broadway. People are locking their bikes to places. So we have bicycle activity, and we just want to accommodate that and provide routes for people to get from the residential areas to the station area and to the downtown area along Broadway. So just so we'll go through the types of bike facilities. Examples looking like this. So a shared lane marking is a bike logo with these two arrows called a chevron. These are used in locations where the speeds are lower than 40 miles an hour, and where there's not enough room for a dedicated bike lane. So some of the residential feeders, some of the roads where there's pinch points could transition from a dedicated bike lane to something like this, a shared lane. This is an actual dedicated bike lane. It can go right up against the curb, or it can go in between the parking lane and the moving lane. These are minimum width of 5 feet, and that gives cyclists space to get around an opening door of a car. So this is dedicated space. All it takes is 5 feet in each direction. Where there is additional space available, which is not always a luxury, but sometimes that's the case, you could add a buffer to enhance the feeling of comfort and safety in the bike lane. So just another sort of level of facility. And then all of these with intersections, intersections of where different directions of travel meet, a lot of conflicts can happen there. So intersection markings that similar to those that are used for vehicles now, that we call them deer tracks, to guide you around turns and through unusual geometries in the intersection. This does the same, sort of keep everything organized through that intersection. So here's the overall map. Again, the solid lines are dedicated bike lanes. Most of Duffy, as well as Newbridge here, have shoulders that are already there. They're at least 6 or 8 feet wide, usually more. And so there's space for dedicated bike lanes. There are some locations where either on-street parking or other uses require a transition to a shared lane, and then some of these quieter roads where people can make their way from area south, and then coming in from the east, over on Heights Place, a nice quiet residential street. And really the goal is to get to the outside edges of this underline arrow, and that's the last facility, which is a shared facility. We'll come back at the end and go into detail on that. But really the idea is to get everybody to those 2 points so they can safely traverse 106 Jerusalem Avenue and 107. The next intersection that we'll look at is Duffy and Newbridge Road. So this is just 1 block south of the station. Here's the photo. Here's the station right here. New York Bank and the town garage over here. So you've got really wide travel lanes. You've also got wide shoulders, which are in this block are being used as bus stops. All the buses that come through Hicksville stop over here. But the shoulders south of, along New Bridge south of Duffy, and then on Duffy in both directions are available for other use. So that's one recommendation. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, this is a very, very busy area for the transit. So here's what the intersection looks like now. There is a one-block stretch of bike lane that was designed in here when this was redesigned. And so what we're proposing is to not paint these bike lanes green, that's just to highlight them for you to see, but have bike lanes like we showed, painted striped bike lanes, some intersection markings to bring people from the train station area to disperse south and east and west from there. Moving just west of that intersection is still on Duffy. See New Bridge right over here. Here's the town garage again. There is a pedestrian pathway that connects from New York Sports Club to the station. Steve mentioned this is a very heavy pedestrian crossing here from the garage to use that walkway. It's also a very heavy turning movement for cars trying to get into the garage to park. Here are some photos of a typical morning out there. Here's the garage, so you've got vehicles turning in, pedestrians looking for a gap where they can to cross, and they're all headed towards this walkway here, which leads to this nice newly refurbished tunnel. So if you've got a pass and you don't need to get into the station, it's a really convenient way to get there, but you just need to cross Duffy. So the idea here is to create an intersection with the in and out of the garage, all the pedestrians crossing. We went out one morning from 7 to 8 a.m., over 400 pedestrians crossing at this location. So there's a very high demand, and it would bring safety improvements to this location. Here we are north of the station now. Here's John Street, New Bridge, Broadway, Jerusalem coming down here. Right now, the condition here is this very wide median with front and angled parking, so particularly over here, backing out, it's pretty close to the intersection. It has mixed utilization. There's a county police stall right here, so some of this parking is dedicated to police parking. And then these two being the highest crash locations, over 10% of the crashes in these higher study area were at these two locations. At Broadway and John specifically, here you are standing between Broadway and Jerusalem. Here's another view where you see here's the southbound Broadway, but to get onto Jerusalem, it's a little bit unusual. Turning, merging over, and just very, very long pedestrian crossings. Same thing at New Bridge and John, just to the west, very long crossings, another high crash location. So the concept here is to create curb extensions where we can. So again, on the state roads, the curb extensions are not protruding into the roadway, but on the county or town, they are, so that shortens the crossing distance here. To create a more continuous median here with some of the parking retained, as well as some additional parking along the curbside so that the net parking change is minimized. Protecting the left turn so that you always have the left arrow when to indicate the left turn, extending the left turn bay, and really just tightening up the intersections and making them a bit more organized. And you'll see here, this is showing the entrance to Jerusalem closed off. We'll get to the details of that and how we came to that in a couple of slides. Steve, I'm going to pass it over to you for this one.
Okay. Now we're looking at the train station itself. Here's the Hicksville train station, the two big surface parking lots, the interruption of the town facility here, and then the two surface lots to the west. So what our focus was is to really just clean up the area that is the the main parking lot, we'll call it, as well as the circulatory route that kind of comes in by the Dunkin' Donuts and underneath and out in front of the station. So here's looking out in front of the station.
Some corrections already.
Here's the main parking lot, so to speak. No pedestrian facilities. How do you get to your car? How do the commuters get in and out? And you're basically coming out from underneath the pillars here, and you're on your own, and you're mixing with the pickup and drop off traffic as well as the commuting traffic. So these are the constraints and the conditions that occur. Mainly of which is just north of the tracks. Basically, there's 3 lanes there, but there's really effectively one, as you know, taxis and cars pick up and drop off, and Uber and kiss and ride all day long here, mostly standing more so than dropping off. Same on this side, even worse, it just effectively becomes a parking stall. So you're left with one active travel lane. And we saw this on both sides, both on the Dunkin' Donuts side as well as north of the tracks. And then just a general overview, you know, although the statue is great and we can find a new location for it, kind of mucking up things in terms of circulation here. And then just general common sense infrastructure things, you know, how am I supposed to walk on a sidewalk with the taxi stand in the way? Basically, you know, needs to be, you know, larger space for this little bit of a joke. And then just basic infrastructure, the sidewalks to, from, and around the train station are all in serious need of disrepair. So with that, we're showing, focused just mainly around this part. These recommendations can go to the other surface or town lots. But for this exercise here, what we wanted to do, the biggest problem was, and we're talking to the legislators along Island Railroad, is this area. The Dunkin' Donuts drop off on the south side, the 3 lanes, or perceived 3 lanes, on both the north and south side. So what we're looking to do here is widen out. It's tough to see here. You can see it on the back room. This is gray. This is basically another 8-foot of sidewalk that juts out on the south of the tracks. That would take away that, let's say, that first lane. So that would be an area, so now you can walk beyond the pillars and not stand and get clipped on your nose standing on the curbside. Gives you another 8 feet to actually stand and wait for the pickup. With that space created, we're now down to 1 through travel lane through the underneath the tracks, and then
That's great.
and what do we do there? Oh yeah, so we widened that out, created 1 travel lane through, and it's basically becomes self-policing. You take away the 3rd lane, and you have 1 drop-off lane dedicated with striping, with signage, all curbside. So this widened sidewalk will have a curbside drop-off, and then on the Dunkin' Donuts side, you know, on that side where people are parking to get the coffee instead of, you know, actually using the Hicksville train station, you know, that's basically a no-no, and we really wanted to be self-policing. And what I say is that once you make that through lane, you're basically moving people along. A little counterintuitive, but we've done this at other busier train stations. For example, in Great Neck, we're taking these 3 lanes, in 1 dedicated signed, striped, and designated use, and then one travel through lane, and that'll move traffic along, and it'll prevent anyone from parking along that Dunkin' Donuts side. So that activity is just tremendous. The to and the from and the pickup and drop off there. On the north side, we're looking to expand out and actually create a bigger plaza space so that people can congregate and wait for their rides. And as I mentioned, that was where the taxi stand was already taking up the sidewalk. So this allows for, this little loop in here, allows for 1 pickup curbside lane with, for the taxis and for Uber drivers. And it keeps the circulation moving this way, kind of separate from the actual parking lot itself. So the parking lot circulation, similar to what's there now, just formalized. This is all perimeter new sidewalk, as well as a sidewalk that actually takes you through the parking lot. So you come out onto this plaza, cross at the crosswalk, and you're able to walk on raised islands and crosswalks to the individual parking stores. With this also, you know, the biggest issue is We really want to designate this for, you know, the taxi and the quick drop-off, but we would have the circulation come down, and what this is a brand-new sidewalk, basically doubling, lengthening, tripling the length of the pickup drop-off area. So there would be wayfinding signage to make the new route to come down either Wyckoff or down Marion Place and come down and use this entire area that is, you know, virtually, you know, underutilized at this moment. And that carries a new sidewalk that runs back to the back parking lots as well. This is right now currently has cars parked and really not pedestrian friendly. We would kind of eat into that slope that's there, create more space, wider sidewalk, and tree-lined walkway. In addition, this in here in pink was the tunnel that Chris was mentioning. So really celebrate that location. It's kind of a hidden gem, so that the parking from the commuters and of course the other side of Duffy can come through at that location. So it's all about tree-lined parking, organization, and pedestrian enhancements around the grading space where we don't have it now.
Thanks. Okay, and then I will present the last two before we get to questions. So this is our largest area. It is, we're looking all the way from John down to the station and looking at Jerusalem and Broadway. So here is the main station entrance, here's the overpass. Right now, we've got a couple of conditions on Jerusalem Avenue. Here, we've got backups that go from the intersection of Broadway down to the railroad overpass, which can have implications on pedestrian crossings. We also have this 2-block stretch that's 2 lanes, kind of. Sure, yes, yep. So we also have over here a 2-block stretch that's 2 lanes. It's more lanes than are necessary for the number for the volume of traffic there, and it also sort of gives an opportunity if there's not a lot of other conflicts for drivers to pick up speed. So when they arrive right to this crossing at Jerusalem, which is a high pedestrian crossing, the speeds are rather high. So these are sort of 2 of the conditions that we're looking at addressing. We've looked at a number of options. We modeled 2 of those options in our traffic modeling system. The first option is this option here. This is based on the geometry changes, so reconstructing the grid that came out of the DRI process, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative process. That was a series of meetings and public process to come up with a number of recommendations to enhance the downtown area. When that process was undertaken, there was no traffic analysis to sort of check or vet the recommendations that came out of it. So in addition to our overall project goals, a piece of this work is working closely with the town on the implications of traffic on the options we're looking at. This one was to test that. We're testing the recommendations that came out of the DRI process. We are also looking at what are the goals of that process. So we understand that, you know, enhancing park space and improving mobility were major goals of that. By opening up Barclay, however, that created some traffic-related issues. There were also some, by stopping Jerusalem, the actual DRI called for Jerusalem to be closed from Herzog all the way to John. We basically worked it out to a practical level, so you would need to have access to this parking lot, but this would just be access in and out of that parking lot, so it would be more like a curb cut. Otherwise, traffic would stop at Herzog. If this were to, so in other words, to test this, we had to figure out everything within the scenario that would be required to kind of mitigate some of the problems that it would cause. One of the major issues, however, is right here. Right here currently, and I'll show you photos in a minute, there are a bunch of there's a guide rail, there's some little bollards and delineators to try to stop pedestrians from crossing where they really want to cross. If we were to do this scenario to try to realize what the recommendation of the DRI process was, it would require turning Herzog from two-way now to one-way, 2 lanes, just to accommodate all the vehicles that were going northbound on Jerusalem. So it would have to be 2 lanes, and then it would create a very, very, very heavy turn from Herzog north onto Broadway, where right now there is no conflict, so it would be introducing a new conflict into this area, and it's sort of counter to the goals of improving pedestrian mobility and safety. Also, in addition, even with the 2 lanes on Herzog, we said, well, 1 lane's not going to cut it, let's try it with 2 lanes. Even with 2 lanes, when we modeled it, the backups went beyond Jerusalem right away. So that right there, from a traffic perspective, is a failure. The other failure was at this new intersection of New Bridge and Barclay. Currently, there is a median that blocks through movements, and by opening this all up and allowing these different turning movements conflicting with what's existing there now, that also, this intersection also failed, this new intersection, so, or this new configuration of the intersection. So, but we looked at, what are these goals that how can we get as close to these goals as possible with still, creating a situation that in the future, if implemented, is not going to create, generate problems, and how can we even mitigate some of those problems? So the option we came up with, and these are the 2 that we ran through the traffic model, but what we did in between these 2 options is we looked at a series of other options, and we said, well, if that one failed because of this intersection, how do we work around it? And what we came up with is this. And this alternative keeps the northbound Jerusalem lanes, 2 of them, in the alignment that they are. And the benefit of that is that it creates what we call a normalized intersection. If you have an intersection that has 4 right, that's a right angle intersection, conflicts are reduced, crashes are reduced, just overall navigation at intersections improved. And so when possible, this is something that we try to do, is to normalize the intersection. In fact, that's why these northbound lanes are bending at the angle they are, so that they come in as close to a right angle as possible. By closing this 5th leg, this intersection actually improves as far as capacity. This is, again, one of the high crash locations. This is also something that is a remnant from the DRI recommendations. And so what would happen with vehicles coming down Broadway that would have taken Jerusalem is they'll stay on Broadway and they'll turn in here. The advantage of keeping this sort of parallel to the northbound lanes is that rather than having that 2-block stretch of just straight open road with nothing slowing vehicles down, this will create a bend in the road that'll give a natural traffic calming. And also, you really only need 1 lane southbound, so that means that the median can get much wider, and it gives a nice boulevard effect with some landscaping here. So coming in via Jerusalem now would be a nice gateway into the downtown area. Okay, so this is what we're recommending for this intersection. You'll see some overlap here with how this all plays into the last project, which is the Underline. The Underline is a name that we got from the DRI. It was one of the projects that was considered as part of the DRI, and that's why when we started this project, we looked at all the recommendations, the ones that we thought that the DRI recommended to be funded. We also looked at recommendations that were part of the DRI considerations, but that were not recommended to be funded. So this concept really, it's twofold, and where we really start is with these 3 intersections that pedestrians have to navigate if they're going from one side to the other of these 3, this 106 and 107 basically. On the outer sides, getting through. So At Newbridge, we've got a lot of bus activity. We've got a lot of pedestrian activity. So that's the first intersection that we're looking at, and how can we prioritize that for bus and intermodal transfers, because this is an intermodal station. At Jerusalem here, this is where you've got the 2 blocks of southbound travel here, and pedestrians crossing now at just the raised median, just a curb, no pedestrian ramps, no particular lighting or anything. And then at Broadway and Herzog, here's where I was talking about the guide rail and the little bollards. These are really intended to stop people from doing what everybody wants to, which is go straight from here to here, as opposed to three crossings. So the goal of first and foremost is how do we facilitate all of these different situations. Each of these intersections has a specific context that we're looking to address. And the idea is that the space is here. So down here in the bottom corner, this is really this 2 sets of corridors between the columns. This is what we want to replicate for the entire stretch between 106 and 107. In some places you have part of it, you've got parking that's sort of encroaching in, and really what we want to do is make dedicated space so that pedestrians and cyclists can use separate spaces, and then at the crossings have designated locations to cross. So here you see people crossing. This is Herzog right over here. There's no crosswalk, but this is where people need to get to and from. Here is a view of where you would stand if you used the designated crosswalk. And here again is the crossing at Jerusalem, where it's just find a gap in between. And here are some of the vehicles backing up, where you've got people crossing in between those vehicles when they encounter at the light. And then here is at Newbridge, where you've got a very, very heavy pedestrian activity because of the main entrance, but also you've got cyclists coming in. This is where a lot of the bike parking is. So distributing bike parking through the underline is also really important. And then specifically buses. Every bus that comes through Hicksville stops within a block of the station on Newbridge. So really looking at how do we keep private vehicles out of the bus lanes to do drop-offs and manage the pedestrian volumes. So one of the elements, in addition to the safety treatments, is creating a sense of place. So when somebody drives when somebody's going about their way, they're driving through and they encounter a number of possibly dark overpasses, and they're indistinguishable in a lot of ways. This is a project that's been implemented. It's a project we designed in Philadelphia. It's a very similar situation. This was the existing condition. It's a really heavily used intermodal transit center, a lot of pedestrians, and what was installed was LED lighting, so low energy usage. In this case, they went with the kind of high-end treatment of these die-cast metal plates that cast shadows, but the effect is a lighting effect that when you approach it in a vehicle, you notice there's something a bit different. So to act as kind of a gateway to the downtown Hicksville area. And so we did a photo simulation based on this photograph here. So here's the one that we've seen a number of times, people crossing at Jerusalem Avenue. Here's what it could look like during the day with the safety improvements implemented. So widen the median, give pedestrian crossing ramps, a marked crosswalk, so proper pedestrian treatment where you've already got pedestrians. Even over here where there's an entrance to a driveway, the best practice for that is keep the sidewalk at the same level and have the cars come up. If you're on a wheelchair or if you're using, if you have trouble navigating, going up and down is much more difficult as a pedestrian. And then these are rapid flashing beacons, so these flash to indicate that pedestrians will be present. And then you can see in the background sort of park expansion north. And so this is that kind of boulevard between the north and southbound Jerusalem lanes, so it's wider, planted, etc. And then at night, something subtle, doesn't have to be like the full Spring Gardens treatment, but something to sort of brighten it up, because that is certainly an issue right now, but also provide a gateway to downtown Hicksville, and kind of indicate, hey, there's a lot going on here. It is the busiest train station on Long Island, so it's definitely worthy of highlighting it a little bit. And that is the overview. We're gonna have Sean come up real quick to talk about next steps, and then we'll get right into Q&A. Sean? David? Sorry.
Thank you, Chris. So just as far as next steps, now that we've presented the recommendations following tonight's meeting, we are going to go through all the feedback that we get from you all tonight at the boards and through the Q&A discussion that's about to begin. The consultant team is going to continue working on the cost estimates for all of the recommendations and work on the final report. So we hope to have that completed by the end of this winter. That final report is going to be our guiding document on how to move forward with all the recommendations. It's important to remind you that all of these recommendations are not going to occur on the county's property or right-of-way. Some of it will. Some of it will have to be on a state roadway, on a town roadway, on railroad property. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, but we have all of those stakeholders at the table with us. We've had them since the beginning, and we're going to keep coordinating with them all to identify what the
I understand. I just want to explain that we have data that this is the worst accident location. It has 5 legs to it. So all we did was, this is really like a slip lane, so you're coming down here now. What we're doing is taking them, you're on Broadway for another 200 feet. This is a right turn lane.
Yeah, exactly, and if you have a truck trying to make a right-hand turn onto that little street, that's gonna be a problem. Just like you're gonna have a problem on the Wendy's corner if you bump out that curb. If you have the tractor trailer, because we have another now a big warehouse on John Street, that you're gonna be having all these tractor trailers come to. So that's gonna be another headache. They're never gonna make that right turn onto John Street.
No, let me just explain. This is a planning study with the information that we have. This whole project would be vetted through the state DOT. They have a permit approval process. They wouldn't let anything go through without the turning movements.
But you're presenting it. You're presenting it as...
This is in a conceptual stage. If it was to be advanced into the further design stages, this would all be vetted out. The traffic would have to be ran through the DOT, so taking this to another level. It's their facility, and each one of those turning with those truck movements, we do those when we're in preliminary and final design. We work those truck movements that they actually work. We have to show that to the client, to the state, for them to approve it. So there's a serious approval process that the state has, so to that would allay your issues.
They're building lots of warehouses in Hicksville now. I don't know if you know that or not, but they're building lots of warehouses. And we're gonna get more tractor trailers in our town.
The designs would not, the curb returns would not be designed that didn't accommodate the wheelbase 65 truck that tractor trailer is coming.
Okay, so just to show you something, I have video of a FedEx truck that made a right turn onto Kuhl Avenue, which is a residential, backing into a very small building. The guy couldn't do it. I have a video, he could not do it. And that's where the new warehouse is gonna go, on Kuhl and West John Street. We can't hold all these big trucks in our town, we cannot.
I mean, I think, look, we heard this at the first meeting. Clearly, we knew of the 8 items that were presented that this was the most challenging. And we certainly recognize that the truck issue is beyond Hicksville. It's, issue we've got to deal with this regionally. And we're going to try to break tonight to get some folks to talk about that. Sean, who's the gentleman who's going to help us with the regional truck issue?
Mike.
Mike, where's Mike? Let's point out to Mike. Mike, what's his last name? What?
Mike Hagan.
Mike Hagan. Say hi to Mike Hagan. Hi, Mike. Mike's here tonight to help us plan regionally on that when we get to our break. But
Sure Mike knows where the exits are.
poor Mike, I put him on the spot. So, all right, we're gonna keep going with questions. I think we heard that loud and clear that that's one of the most challenging things that came out tonight. Sean, you wanna grab?
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to reinforce too that these are draft recommendations, and the point of this meeting is to hear your feedback. And as Eric said, this is the toughest one to, to grasp, and I think in the spirit of the DRI, we wanted to try to maintain some of those or expand some of those recommendations. So we're going to go back to the drawing board, especially looking at this recommendation. So we appreciate this feedback because you're right, you live here, you see this, you drive this every day. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and take a hard look at this recommendation in particular.
And I think the DRI's plan, while it was a plan, it was really primarily a plan on how to spend $10 million for the betterment of downtown Hicksville, not necessarily a traffic plan. This is a traffic plan, so I think we got to sort that out. Let's get to some Hicksville folks, and sorry, Phil, I can't get to you because we heard from you already. We gotta go back to Joel. I want to get to everybody once. Ma'am, you from Hicksville?
Yes.
Great. Hi.
My question is, why, if we already know established we have a huge traffic problem, why are we allowing more apartment complexes to come in and bring more, way more traffic than we have now?
Well, that's a question of whether it brings more, and let's get to that. No, but they've run the numbers on this, and we gotta get to that. So, based on the build out, Chris, we had this conversation today.
Yeah.
Based on the build out of current zoning versus the new zoning, what does the traffic look like?
So we ran the traffic based on the existing, okay, so we've got the existing, and that's what we presented in June. And then we ran a couple of different scenarios for 10 years out, so that the no build is if nothing happened, but all the other background development regionally is taking place. We included the developments that are within the study area that are planned to happen. And those developments are mostly TOD and residential, so those have very different traffic volume generators than, say, office space or restaurants. So that's a huge factor. So you have a land use that would be coming in that has a lower usage, but at the end of the day, the point here was to look at the recommendations, look at what's feasible, try to make it safer, but make sure that it's going to be feasible from a traffic perspective, and that's how we got from option A to this option B.
Right, wait,
The difference.
Okay, but it's convenient that the traffic where the rebuilding is just shy of where the Sears apartment complex is gonna be, and then you also have the apartment complex.
But Sears is not approved.
Yeah, but
Sears what?
Sears is not approved.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. Is it approved? Wait, hold on. Brent, Jim, can you answer that?
There's been no public hearing yet on the Seritage property. It's scheduled for March 10th at Hicksville High School at 7 p.m. It'll be a regular town board meeting where the Seritage proposal will be presented before the town board. At that opportunity, everyone that's here will have the opportunity to speak after having seen the plan, and the town board will have the opportunity to listen to all the residents and hear what they have to say. But there has been no approval or no building permits or anything issued for Seritage.
Because when I was at the last meeting, it sounded like that was a fine deal. I was at that meeting for Seritage.
The town has never made that representation. Some people have. It was not ever to be made that way. And the public hearing will take place on March 10th.
so I think just generally with these recommendations is that we looked at 10 years out with all the development. We were pretty conservative. We wanted to be err on the side of let's just make sure, add in all the trips that we think are reasonable. And then the comparison between 10 years with no change and 10 years with option B is there's no difference. So in other words, it alleviates some congestion, it shortens some crossing distances, which help shorten the length of traffic signals. So there's a lot of things at play. And the goal here was to maximize the DRI goals and the community goals that we heard the first time around in June, but still achieve a workable traffic scenario in the downtown area. And so that's how we got to this. Are there other possibilities? Potentially.
This gentleman said it. Yeah, see it?
My name's Gordon Gray, the third. I'm a Hicksville resident. I've been for my entire life. I have 2 questions, however, I can fuse them into one. They're both brief. So I'm a trustee at the Hicksville Berg Museum, and I'm also friends with Anthony Labriola, the new owner of the Long Island Public Theater.
Yeah, sure.
They both organizations are a little intrigued by how if there's any other ideas that may affect both our establishments.
So this is really a land use issue more than traffic, I think. So Jim, as far as impact on the Puppet Theater and Gregory Museum, any either traffic impacts or land use impacts? Do either of you have them, see them?
I mean,
Sorry, I think I'm jumping in the
yeah, I mean,
Bike lane goes through both of them.
yeah, we've got shared lanes on Heights Place, like around the museum. We don't think that the volumes are going to be, you know, high enough to cause any major impacts. You know, I think if anything, if we took cars off the road, it would have a modal shift, but it's probably not going to be a very noticeable effect.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see much of a traffic impact based on the proposed developments here, but from an economic standpoint, I think you may see it by having more foot traffic in the area and making Hicksville returning to a shopping destination and something, you know, putting it on the map that will probably bring more consumers to you. From an economic benefit, I see more so than any traffic detriment based on your location.
Yeah, I mean,
That's regarding it's also regarding the bike lanes. So as a cyclist, I've actually been almost run over and run off the road in the bike lanes, no less, on Broadway on numerous times. So on behalf of other cyclists, I'm wondering, would there be any bit of deterrence to keep motorists out of the bike lanes?
you know, I mean, whenever you're talking about paint and markings, they're not physically separated. There's an enforcement component, but I think the idea is, with all these recommendations, is to improve the conditions for biking and for walking. That raises that'll elevate the number of people out there, and then it's sort of it's like a snowball. You know, there's safety in numbers, more people around. So these are not self-enforcing designs. There is an enforcement component, but in the cases where we can, like for instance the bus lanes, painting bus lanes red up against the curb, stop people from parking where the buses are supposed to stop. That's an example of a design intervention where you can sort of get to some of the enforcement benefits, but you know, I think if there's dedicated space for everybody, there's less likely to be conflicts. But as you noted, there still can be.
I want to get to every Hicksville resident once. We're already past our 30 minutes, so we're going into overtime. Hicksville folks, questions? Going once, going twice? Yes.
Dorinda, I live in Hicksville.
Yep.
Duffy. So when the 18-wheelers come down 107 and 106 and they make their right turn, the next study is going to prove that they can make their right turns? Is what you're telling me? Like they are going to turn right on Duffy Avenue, and right now, as it stands, if I'm in the left turning lane off Duffy onto 106, when that 18-wheeler makes a right, he misses me by inches. And if he's coming down Broadway onto Jerusalem, you're telling me there's a right turn lane, that 18-wheeler is going to be able to make that right turn on Jerusalem? Because when that 18-wheeler hits that split, he's going to think he can go right because his GPS says so. Just like his GPS says he can go on the freeway, which is a parkway, it's going to tell him there's a road there. And when anybody else gets to that corner, how is that corner going to affect the diner? Because I drive up that road to turn right into the diner, so how am I getting into that diner that you're taking away the diner's ability to have customers?
Yep, no, that's a good question.
Is anyone from the diner here tonight? It's a great diner, by the way.
Go to the diner here.
So I don't want to show my face there if we're recommending
this. So we
this.
thought about that, and this is another case where we took sort of the ideal from the DRI and we looked at specifically how are people going to get into the diner. I didn't point this out, so it's my fault. We added driveway access here. It's a 20-foot driveway, so you come in and you turn in here, and instead of coming in and turning in here. So it's based, you know, there's also access from John Street, but we recognize that southbound vehicles are gonna wanna get in there. So this is all, if you look at the DRI, all of this is redeveloped, okay? So we're looking at real world conditions, there's no approved plan for that, so we're looking at that lot, how do you get in there? Also, just another little detail is how do you get from this, which is Festival Plaza, which is, flexible parking and community space. If there's an event, it could serve as parking, it could serve as just a completely open plaza space. How do you get from there to this property? So we added a little driveway. This is still concept level, but we do recognize that, there's
So
real...
is the next survey going to show how the 18-wheelers are going to get on the
Absolutely, yeah. So what we did at a conceptual level, we showed this with a reasonable curb radius. Once you get to the next level of design, where you're going into preliminary design, already then we're gonna have to start using software to show that the turns can work and that they can work without tracking into other lanes and things like that. So that's certainly a detail that will be in design.
I know you ladies in blue had a question. Mrs. Sartor? Yes?
Yes, Dolores Sartor from Hicksville. You had one street that had mixed bicycles and automobiles together, where there was no bike lane. On that same street, we have trucks and buses. I don't think that's too safe for the bicycle riders.
Sure. Yeah.
Double picture, shared lane.
We'll come back in a second, I promise. There we go. Oh, it's actually here we go. So.
Those with the white cars.
Oh, right. Yeah. So shared lanes are. Right now, does anyone know where you're supposed to bike on a road that doesn't have a bike lane?
No.
In the lane. This is allowed anywhere at any time. This is just an indication that, hey, there's going to be cyclists here. This is just a designated route. It also helps cyclists navigate their way instead of picking and choosing whatever they think is the best way. Somebody's put some thought into it and looked at some parameters and come up with these. It's definitely not the preferred. We want as comfortable of a bike facility as we can, but in a lot of cases, there's not space and the volumes and the speeds are low enough. There are cases with buses, and that's a condition that is less than ideal, but to get people to and from, it's the best that we can do without removing, say, like an entire moving lane and making it one way, which is not feasible.
Well, we have a tremendous amount of trucks going through our streets.
We understand.
Nice in the country.
Bring Mike up.
There we go. I think we're gonna do, I just want to see if there's any Hicksville residents that have not spoken yet. So, there's a gentleman right here. Yes, you? No, question? No, sorry, I'm trying to get the Hicksville residents. Lady in the back, lady in the back? Yeah, you've had one, yes.
This is actually going to go back to the parking spaces around the train station. I see that you're trying to increase the pedestrian walkways and increase the spaces. Has there been any thought put into protection from the sun and the elements? Because that's why people will crowd in spaces and make it very difficult for pickup and for drop-offs. Are there going to be like awnings or like?
I think that's more of a design detail when we get to that point, when this particular project gets to that point. But things like shade trees, shade structures. We have a couple of trees in there. Absolutely, yeah, stuff like that.
Opportunities are to implement them and how we can go about doing that. The county executive has included in her proposed 2020 capital plan $1 million to move forward with the next step of this process. We recognize that more funding will be needed, and the county will be working with the legislators and all our stakeholders to identify potential grant opportunities and other funding sources so that these recommendations can become a reality. So after this study phase is completed, The project has to go into design and engineering and then construction. But we're nearing the end of the first part, which is a good step, and we're looking forward to your feedback in the next Q&A part. So I'm going to call Eric to do that.
Thank you. All right, good stuff, guys. All right, so let's get to questions. All right, so how are we gonna do this? So we have 30 minutes for questions, so keep the questions brief, keep the answers as brief as we can, and stay informed. And then you get another bite at the apple to go specific to all the different stations to get really some of the detailed answers. And then past tonight, we're still gonna get lots of questions answered through the website and through follow-up outreach, which we can do to different groups, meetings, and other things. So we want to keep the process going. I see a gentleman in the back there. So, yeah, you. Hey, just say your name too.
The parking we have now at the train station, why can't they make that parking tier, garage? So that we can move a lot of the parking from all over to downtown, consolidate it, but all these people aren't walking.
So, how do we want to handle the parking question, the great parking question, which is, Steve?
Parking costs a lot of money, parking structures cost a lot of money, and yes, there has been talk that the Long Island Railroad has talked about a parking garage. The town already has one on the southern part of the train station, but yes, to consolidate and to include a parking garage makes a lot of sense, and will concentrate all of the parking and give you even more space than what we created here. But with this study, we have to design what is out in front of us, and that's what we do. These are the recommendations based on what we have out there at this moment. Parking garage would be a long-term.
All the money that Long Island Railroad's invested, Hicksville being the busiest train station in Long Island, would only make sense.
They were supposed to, right? I mean, is anyone from MTA Long Island Railroad here?
So then you guys do your plan according to that.
So they've been part of the technical committee. They've been a little quiet back and forth on where it all stands. There was supposed to be a garage that was promised through the third track process, was promised through the 3DRI process. Let's just say their vision of what a garage is, from what I've heard, and I'm not in the room on this, but there was recommendations for very tall buildings that this community does not want. So there may be a little difference in the vision of what the MTA thinks is a garage and what the town and the community may want. That's not for today. We're working with the constraints that we have. Do you want to jump in on this, Jim? Because I'm kind of freelancing on this, but I think I'm in orbit.
I think everything Eric said is accurate, and we're still having ongoing conversations with the MTA. We're actually having another meeting with them in the very near future to discuss any latest proposal that they have to build a parking structure there. Their last proposal we were not satisfied with. It did come with strings, which we didn't feel fit in with the wants of the community and what the communities had expressed to us regarding building heights. And what we wanted from the MTA is what they've done with Mineola and Westbury. If we provide the land, they build a garage. Their last offer was not that same. It was different. It came with revenue capture options. In other words, they were looking for ways to fund the garage. There's no funding in the current MTA budget for a garage. We were led to believe during third track that it would be there. It's been in the final FEIS, and we're still having conversations with them and trying to hold them to the promises that we were led to believe we would be getting that garage.
Since this is a hot topic also, let's welcome.
I just want to reiterate what Jim McCaffrey just said. I met privately with the MTA also. When we met regarding the third track, we were promised a garage, a parking garage. That was part of, what they had promised here in Hicksville. And I point blank said to them, and one of the gentlemen from the MTA that's been in our meetings, he said, I was at those meetings too. Yes, they did say that. And, I felt like, okay, so now you had Hicksville on board, and we're getting this parking garage. Now you have your third track, and screw Hicksville. I took it from the MTA. So they know certainly our displeasure with it. They know the town's displeasure. They know Vision Long Island's, but all of us displeasure. All of us, we are all on the same page. At the same time, we can only do what we can do in the parameters that we're given. And that's been a big holdup, even with our whole DRI, because obviously that parking garage plays a big part of it, because we have to have places to put cars, and we don't want them on our residential streets, everybody parking in our homes, by our homes and everything. So that's something the town's been working hard on, and like we said, we're not gonna sell ourselves short either by saying, okay, you'll give us this, but it's gonna be, you know, this huge monstrosity of a building that we don't want in our community. So I just wanted to share that with you, that we are all on the same page. And
Thank you, Legislator Walker. We're going to do this, I'm going to try to get the Hicksville people that we've identified, and certainly want folks to say your name and address. I'm going to get to Phil, and then I'm going to get to Joel, and then we're going to roll our way through as many people as quickly as possible. Phil Heckler.
Phil Heckler, 28 J Street. Just a question, the parking garage we talked about was on the north side to the west.
Thank you.
Sorry. The MTA parking garage was on the north side to the west, I think outside of the 8 suggestions. So my question is, would your 8 recommendations be consistent with the garage area we proposed under the DRI?
Yeah, when I was up here showing the train station improvements, I just focused on the 2 main parking lots. I left the others out because that's where we would envision that parking garage to be. As well, when we ran the traffic with a proposed parking garage to run the, you know, what I'll call a worst case scenario, more a concentrated amount of cars at that location. So the traffic and all the studies have it there. The images don't have the garage there because of the reasons just mentioned.
I'm going to get to Joel.
I don't think I need that.
For one question. I know he's got like 5 on his sheet, so.
Eric, you can't discount all of these things.
We're not at all, but we're trying to get to everybody. Give me one.
No, I'll go quickly. Just gonna make the points. On northbound Newbridge Road, south of Duffy, up to West Cherry, he indicated that it was, he didn't indicate that it was a bus holding area for the MTA buses, and it signed it accordingly. Eastbound on West John Street, approaching Jerusalem Avenue and Broadway, where they have all those collisions, the lane markings are not signed well, so even today I was there, a car tried to make a right turn from the middle lane onto Broadway, cutting everybody off. Southbound Newbridge Road, recently, and I notified Mike Montesano because we've been in communication with him about the DOT addition of traffic lights. I watched a fire truck a couple of weeks ago with its lights and sirens on from the north side of the trestle to Old Country Road take 4.5 minutes because of the lights that were added and not timed properly at West Nikolai and West Cherry.
Joel, I'm going to stop you. Joel, I'm stopping you. Steve, what do you got?
Yeah, no, we agree with the statements you had made. The paper markings, part of that would be delineated properly with the improvements on John Street you had mentioned. And then as far as the state goes, that's a question to the state. They, as part of their pedestrian safety action program, introduced more traffic lights for safer pedestrian crossings. Whether they're coordinated or not, that's not something we have that information.
There's 2 other quick things.
Joel, no, we got, Joel, they are important, and we're going to get to them either if we have time. I want to get to, Joel, I want to get to everybody once before I get 5 questions from each person. Ma'am.
Hi, my name
This is a
Lisa.
farce.
I was looking at the horseshoe at the Dunkin' Donuts area that you're talking about widening and making one pickup lane. And I missed the first meeting, but doesn't that directly counter the DRI thing? I mean, DRI was going to make an in and out on John Street. So are we keeping both?
No, we, as Chris had mentioned, we looked at the DRI. It was a planning study done with a limited budget and a limited amount of information. We had a little bit more time, and this is more of a feasible solution in terms of traffic circulation, in terms of pickup and drop off. But yes, we did look at that. It really didn't function well in terms of circulation.
So that's been dropped and
This is a recommendation that we had come up with, it's more feasible than the DRI, which, like I said, didn't have... Excuse me?
The plaza is a dead issue.
No, I mean, we have a smaller plaza area, which is in here in Pear.
The DRI plaza is show.
If that's, we are designing from a functionality standpoint. We saw that, it didn't have the amount of detail that it deserved, and it really didn't function. It may look good, and it's what a lot of those things do. It was a planning study, and it had a limited role. This was the next step, to take a look at the feasibility of these great ideas. Some of them, end up in the cutting room floor.
We can answer that a little bit better. Okay.
There are some things that, from the original DRI, they looked at, and they're looking at some of the things that are here, but some of the things that you're seeing today may also change. They're working on what they can look at now. They can't guarantee that the entire DRI will be built as the model that we all saw. So they have to look at best case solutions if something were not to happen. The DRI is absolutely moving forward, but we're allowed to make changes within the DRI. So, as the gentleman was referring, you'll still see festival plazas here. Station Plaza can be moved as long as we incorporate that green space somewhere else. There's some flexibility in the DRI, so I would expect you're going to see a hybrid of that. There are certain questions, such as the parking garages, that aren't here, but there is going to either be an MTA-built parking garage, or the town is going to RFP out in the very near future to bring in a developer to build the apartments that you saw in the DRI with structured parking. So there's going to be a hybrid of this. We're going to incorporate all their suggestions and look at it. And if we go the DRI process with a private developer, he's going to incorporate all the suggestions from the original DRI plan, as well as a lot of these suggestions which make a lot of sense. So I think you're going to see a hybrid, but they can't design on something that isn't actually here yet. So they're working with current conditions and some proposed conditions, but obviously some of these conditions may change.
And other DRIs have changed. Westbury, the DRI changed. The Central Islip DRI is changing. So this is not new. There is built-in flexibility in the DRI process from the state, and that's what we see. That gentleman in the back has had his hand up for a while. Yes?
On this projection over here, most of the exits that you go into the Newbridge Road, they always go southbound, and there's no U-turns or left turns are allowed over there. Neither at the intersection where they come out, neither at Duffy Avenue. You practically have to go all the way up to Old Country Road before you can make a U-turn, which makes it much more traffic jam over here. Previously, many years ago when I used to drive, the Wyckoff used to be a two-way street, and it would have been a lot easier just to go up Wyckoff, make a right turn on West John, and then you can make a left turn onto Newbridge Road and go ahead. So I don't know why they made it into a one-way street. They're still keeping it as one-way street. It's a pretty wide road, Wyckoff. You can make it into a two-way street, make a right turn and go north. Because you can't go north otherwise on Newbridge Road.
Yeah, the usage, and I may have mentioned it, was that we were looking to use Marion Place, getting the cars and the activity pulled away from the state intersection. Wyckoff itself, if you did make it both ways, you'd come out and you'd have a queue, and all you could do is make the right turn and head towards Newbridge. And you would just be queuing back down to Barclay. So what we're looking for is a more longer queue ability by using Marion Place and using that as eventually the signalized intersection where the parking garage would be. That's where all those vehicles would be coming out.
All right, so want to get Hicksville residents, just say your name. Yes, ma'am?
Your preferred vision for for the traffic to come up Broadway, going down southbound, and be able to make a right then onto Jerusalem, because it's going to be closed off the way that it is now. Will the Barclay Street also be able to access that? Okay, so you didn't point that out in it.
Yes, it actually gives it more flexibility to that intersection. Actually, you can come from Barclay and head south.
Right.
Yeah.
Just say your name and if you live in Hicksville. Yeah. Yeah.
Daniel Solo. I'm not a resident of the town, so just want to make it real quick.
I want to get to everyone in Hicksville first, so I'll get to you. I'm going to line you up next, all right? Hicksville residents, please. I had to get to Cheryl. Cheryl.
My question was the same as Joanne's about the Barclay Street, Jerusalem being cut off in front of the Empire Diner.
Yes.
Okay. Personally, that's where, I mean, I live right there, so I see that traffic. You get one truck, one prime truck at the light where the little locomotive is, that backs up all the traffic, so you can't make a right onto Broadway at all, or to Jerusalem. It stands still because all those prime trucks that are going down to the prime buildings block all of the traffic on 107.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that,
Which is, you want to block more off now. You want to block Jerusalem off. People going south, in front of Wendy's going south on Jerusalem, okay, you're going to block that off. So now everybody's has to go onto Broadway. Broadway is busy enough. We don't need more traffic on Broadway.
yeah, we understand the.
It diverts the traffic, because now if you block Jerusalem off, you got everybody going on 106 and 107, and that Jerusalem doesn't take any normal traffic away from those two other.
Yeah, what this isn't, we're not rerouting.
I live here, I know, I live here, I know.
Shelters to wait under if you're waiting for a ride, things like that. That would all be programmatic design elements in that plaza.
Hicksville residents, I see, there's two more, we're gonna get to the two. Man, in the front, and then back. Yeah, first, yeah.
Joe Sackman.
Yes. Hey.
So, what is the time frames that we're talking about? You know, the website said this started 2019, January, now we're January 2020, and it sounds like there's delays with the MTA, the parking garage, or making assumptions about if it was or isn't there, and just, you know, the overall cost that we're looking at, you know, going forward. Are we seeing more delays? You know, is this going to happen in 2024?
This will happen piecemeal. These 8 projects are logical, you know, breaking points between one idea and the next, and some of them are completely different intersections. So, for instance, the county could go in and put in bike lanes in a few months, possibly. You know, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but things can happen at different times. There's some stuff that's paint and markings that can happen much quicker and doesn't cost as much. Something like a complete reconfiguration is going to have a whole new design process. There'll be public input about that specific design. Design and engineering has to take place. So they'll vary depending on the magnitude. What we'll do after this, once the recommendations are all sort of solidified, because they are still in draft form, as Sean mentioned, is that we'll start putting numbers to them, and that'll start informing, you know, which ones make sense to pair with funding, which ones can we get additional funding for in the next funding cycle. So the answer is it'll be a rollout. There'll be some overlap, there'll be some projects that take longer than others, but the idea of this is to make sure that all these ideas work. So that's where the traffic piece comes in, and then to start getting them implemented.
Okay, just a quick follow-up.
Let's do the follow-up.
He says eight projects. Are these projects connected in any way that if you didn't do one, that it just makes no sense to do the rest?
No.
They can stand on their own. I got to take this last question in the back, no, John. Then we'll get John, and then final 2 questions, and then 3. All right, final 3 questions. Quick questions, quick answers. Quick question. Yes.
John Monitor, Hicksville Garden Civic Association. We have discussed, I've been involved with the revitalization committee.
Yep, you've been on a committee. What's the question? Just give me a question.
It seems to me we keep discussing the same issues every time we come to these meetings. Trucking, parking garages, the whole thing.
What's the question?
Yes.
Sorry.
How can we possibly move forward with some of these innovative plans that you are, and you haven't solved the basic plan, the basic problems in Hicksville. How can you?
I mean, you got a deeper question here. There's a lot of pieces, yeah.
I
Chris.
think we can address, we have addressed safety, so safety is a concern. There are many concerns, but our project specifically is looking at very specific goals, and that's why we want to remind everybody, this is, again, safety. Safety, getting pedestrian activity into the downtown area, making the area right for development. So there's a lot of things that need to happen before other things can come in, before it's as desirable for the downtown to be developed. But yeah, there are some things that are beyond the scope of this study. We can't fund a garage. We can't build a garage without the partners willing to do it. So, but we can work with what we have, which is some safety issues, mobility issues, ADA issues. There's a lot that can be done.
And you've already heard from the town that they are looking at the parking piece. There is a zoning piece. There are things that are moving here together. This is one component of it that is complementary and was a piece that everybody had asked for. So we're moving forward. John, and then we'll get to you. Or close now.
I know he was trying to answer the question, but I'm going to give him, what is the expected time?
Speak up. Give it a loud one.
I was just wondering what the expected time frame of the completion of the project is.
We don't know, because there's like 8 different components, obviously 7 of which we seem to like better than maybe 1 tonight, but they can come at different times. There's state, there's county, there's town, there's different elements.
10 years? 5 years?
Some can be 10, some can be 2.
So at this point, since we're still working out the details, we don't have that, but all of this information will be summarized in a final report. That report will give cost estimates, and it'll give general timeframes, short, medium, long term. Short might be 1 to 2 years, medium might be 3 to 5 years, long term 5 or more. So along those lines, and they'll all sort of, some of them will happen faster than others.
Okay.
All right. This is a fluid process. A couple of things are going to be moving. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and a lot of it's going to come up and be solved in the next few months. 2020 is the year of put up or shut up. We're ready to move forward, and the partners that are going to work with us are going to work with us. If not, they'll be moved to the side, and we're going to move forward. So we expect the zoning to be done in probably the second quarter. We're pushing everything we can to get it for June, but if not, it will probably be September. We're trying to avoid having it in the summer. So we're working, we have to go through secret process. If we can put everything together and put together the zoning for June is our goal, if not September. Once we get that in, we'll see shovels in the ground in the spring of 2021. I think that's the questions that you're looking for. When are you going to see any of the buildings? You're going to see some of these projects. Some of these projects are going to happen. Some may change based on, there might be a building there where there's a parking lot. So some of this is happening, but you will see shovels in the ground in spring of 2021. And the build out could be 2 years, 4 years, 8 years.
Last question.
My name is Margaret Eaton, I'm in Hicksville. So in the meantime...
Guys, we promise, wait. Everyone who spoke once, no. Everyone who spoke once, we tried to get as many folks to Hicksville as possible. This is the last question, because there's other stuff we gotta do. We are here to listen to Hicksville residents first. They are the folks that are, so ma'am, question.
So in the meantime, I think this is for you, Jim. Of course, we've got a long time frame. There's a lot that's involved in this big project. Now, we're, as residents of Hicksville or anywhere, we're zoned to death. We're not allowed to do anything to our homes without getting a CO. Thank you. If you go, they show beautiful pictures of fixing downtown Broadway, the streets, the roads, trees, and everything else. What about going to the storefronts and doing something about signage, about anything to make it look that's a quick fix to make things aesthetically look uniform, awnings, cleanliness, garbage, all of those things. That doesn't need a big project.
This is all being taken care of. Like I said, there are multiple pieces to this. I wish I could explain it all in the matter of 5 minutes to you. Right now, we're working with Hicksville as a community block development grant of $600,000 that's being put into the section along Broadway. So you're going to see new lighting, you're going to see garbage cans, you're going to see a creation of hopefully a sign and facade improvement. You're going to see a lot of those things based There's other grants going out. We've applied to the county for another $400,000 downtown development, which will help us with a new bridge crossing. So there's a lot of components that are all going to come together, and they're all coming together in the next 3 months, which it's hard to believe after we've been at this all this time, but I'm telling you, 2020 is the year all the pieces are going to come together. So don't just think the DRI is the 10 million, because even some of the plans that you saw in the DRI may morph into a little something else. We met with the state and told them, you know, if we put in an RFP for developers, Station Entry Drive, the developer's going to build that. We just saved $3 million. We can move that to something else. As long as the components of it are still the same, the projects within it are allowed to change. We're allowed flexibility. But one of the main concerns everyone says you're forgetting about Broadway. We haven't forgotten about Broadway. But a rising tide lifts all boats. We're going to focus on what we can control and use the other money for the outlying ones. But we do have money budgeted for all the different things. It's just that in this meeting wasn't for that about that tonight. And in the 5 minutes that we have, I couldn't possibly explain it all to you. But you're going to see a lot of action in 2020.
So what we're gonna do now, guys, because we gotta stick time. We're 20 minutes over on the questions. So, Jim, you're gonna stick around, maybe right around here and answer questions for folks? Jim?
Yes,
Can you?
I'm
Yes.
here.
All right, so Jim's here. Good. NV5 guys, let's give a hand to the NV5 guys. And LK McLean, your partners. You guys are gonna stand by those boards and answer any detailed questions, the questions you didn't get answered. Okay, wait, shh, we can't leave. Because the question, poor Mike Hagan over here is going to get a whole stream of people, and I think Sean Sally's going to go over there and give him a little backup. Rose, final comments on...
I want to thank everyone for their presentation, and we will certainly continue to work together, all of us. But one of the things that I think we have to focus on too here is, and I'm going to reach out to the town, certainly work with the county, and work with the state. We have to get trucks to be able to go on Southwest Bay Road.
Yes.
Get some of them off Broadway. And that's very, I know it might not make some people happy on the other side, but bottom line is, and I actually did speak to Arnie about it, I wasn't going to surprise him. But bottom line is, you know, we have so many trucks that come and have to come from that end, that come on to Broadway, and that's just adding to the mess that have to be on Broadway. So if we could get that to be something that happens again, and I know it was going strong for a while, and then obviously it got halted because some people weren't happy. Well, there's a lot of people in Hicksville that are not happy that it all falls on 106 and 107. So, yeah.
Thanks to all the legislators who made it out today. Mike's going to be in the back. Thanks to the team.